Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Chapter 8. I will only be going over 4 vocabulary words in this video from Chapter 8, and that's because I assigned you only 4 vocabulary words from Chapter 8. So these are pretty big, broad, all-encompassing words, which will draw some more meaning from than you might have just been able to pick up from the book. So the first one is Sahel. The second one is Timbuktu. The third one is Sharia, and the fourth one is Swahili. So let's look at all of them one by one. First, Sahel. We're talking about African and Sudanic empires, and the Sahel is a very important geographic zone in Africa. The definition of Sahel is it's the grasslands that are on the outskirts of the desert, the Sahara Desert, in the south, that kind of where resource zones converge, which means, to put it simply, it's an area where the desert meets the forest. That space in between is the Sahel. It's an intermediary zone. Why is it so important? So what? Well, it was a great place for exchange to happen between goods that were coming in from the Sahara, like salt mines in the Sahara Desert. That's a huge resource for salt, which was really important for this time period because people needed something to preserve meat, and it was a major source of salt. And salt is a naturally occurring element, and so there you go. I don't know if it's an element. I'm not much of a scientist, but it's naturally occurring. We dig it out of the earth even now. So the desert is a huge source of that. Also dates, which is an important fruit. It grows on date trees, which can grow in the desert, which is cool because not a whole lot of other things grow in the desert. The forest products that were coming out where basically camels can't live, and so desert and forest were kind of off limits for camel trade. So the forest products that were coming out, gold, some timber, and other things. And then it was a great zone of exchange, the Sahel. So it also allowed 3 major empires to pop up in West Africa. In these areas, which was Ghana first, Mali, and then Songhai. And so these are the 3 major African empires that we look at during this time period of world history. And the Sahel is the zone that because they had control of this zone of exchange, they had access to great amounts of power. The second word that we're looking at is Timbuktu, and Timbuktu is a city which is right in this area, this zone. This is the Sahel. It's a city that's right on the Niger River, close to the Niger River, and it was a center of scholastic activity. There were many people who lived in Timbuktu, and it was an important area for trade, but also an important area for learning, for books. And so the book trade in Timbuktu was very important. And so a lot of folks who were reading and interpreting and copying down the Quran or the Sunnah, the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were here. And so books were said to be the highest degree, the level of civilization. That being able to just sit and read books and interpret them and educate yourself is like the epitome of civilization, because when you're allowed to do that, then great amounts of thinking are happening and people are occupying their minds with more than just growing food. So Timbuktu is this important city that kind of became really important about 600 years ago during the Mali and then Songhai reign as a center for learning and scholastic activity. So that's what it is. That kind of leads into Sharia, which the book doesn't really go into Sharia very much, and we learn a little bit more about it in our later chapters. But the definition of Sharia is Islamic code of law. That's what it is. It's the idea that it's God's law. It's the law of Allah. And obviously, if you believe Sharia, then you have little use for man's laws. And so in a country that has adopted, or an empire that has adopted Sharia, the idea is that it's strictly interpreted as God's official law, and that anything else is not above it. It's going to be below it no matter what. So Sharia was In many ways, in a lot of new African empires in places where Islam spread, technically it was violated because local customs, because Sharia doesn't just have to do with law codes like jaywalking and traffic things and stuff like that. It has to do with personal habits. So what you can do as a person. So it's much more strict than we would consider a law code to be, which doesn't always govern our personal habits, like how we address or how we act or who we choose to be with as a partner. But Sharia does, and so it's much more extensive. And so this has a greater impact on areas that converted to Islam and have adopted Sharia as their local law. So then the last one is Swahili. So Swahili is kind of what the Sahel was to West Africa. Swahili is to East Africa. Swahili is a language, but it's also kind of a culture, a blending of African and Arab culture. So the language Swahili is a blending of the old Bantu languages mixing with Swahili, which is, I'm sorry, not Swahili, Arabic, which is the language of the Arabs. And so as Arab Muslims came down the east coast of Africa, they became heavily involved, as was the case in East and Southeast Asia, or East, South, and Southeast Asia. Um, they became heavily involved in trade, and as a result, there was a blending of language, and this pidgin language of Swahili, which is widely spoken now, took place. And so it was Islam's involvement in the east coast of Africa, which kind of was the zone of exchange for Africa in the Indian Ocean trade, which involved India, China, and Southeast Asia as well. So the monsoon winds, which affect India's geography, also affect the east coast of Africa. And Swahili is this east coast of Africa, which is heavily involved in trading goods with the Indian Ocean Trade Network. All right, so it's 4 words. 7 minutes, less than 2 minutes per word. I'm pretty proud of myself. You should be proud of yourself too, because you're awesome and continue to be awesome. Bye.